really interesting. You were talking about putting roddings in femurs and that kind of thing. And you said that before you all got there to help these kids with rods, that they were put in traction, which was the only way to get the fracture aligned, and had to stay in traction for, what did you say, as much as 6 months?
Depending on the fracture, yes.
I mean, that has to be terrible for those children.
It's awful. It's awful. And that was in the Dominican Republic, and we were able to get a bunch of nails. The problem with a lot of these countries, if you need something put in, you have to buy it. And if the poor people can't afford to buy it. So we then brought a bunch of nails so a lot of these kids could get fixed.
So you take your own instrumentation with you?
We own all our own instruments, which is nice. And we don't generally rod a lot of fractures, which is the way you treat it. But we brought extras and gave them to the hospital in the Dominican Republic.
What about the sanitation conditions? Or, I'm being an operating room nurse. My concern is sterilization and sponges and that kind of thing. How do you handle that? Or do they have facilities there?
Well, they do have autoclaves where we can autoclave our equipment, which is our term for sterilize. But we ship ahead of time about 100 crates of materials, which are all our sponges and cast material and everything. And we have our own entire team. So we are in charge. We clean all our own instruments. We autoclave all our own instruments. So it would be the equivalent of doing an operation here, because we kind of control the whole process. Not to say it wouldn't be done right, but like you say, once you've been in the OR, you want to control it and make sure that there are no mistakes. And so that's how we've done it.
So your days end up being long days?
Very.
Very long. And do all of you participate in the sterilization process? I mean, at this hospital, you doctors come in, you do the cases, you walk out, and we nurses get stuck with the dirty work.
It is a little different in that, for instance, when we first get there in the morning around 6:30, one set of us will go to examine the first set of kids to be operated on that day. Another set of the doctors will go to the ward to see any children who still might be in the hospital. While we do that, the nurses go and start checking all the instruments that have been cleaned the night before. At the end of the day, the nurses are the ones who organize the equipment, and we basically get out of their way, because just like in the U.S., the women are in charge. And so those are situations they don't let us do.
It's good to know that carries through in other countries. You told me that this is your passion, doing this surgery for these kids, and it has to be very, very rewarding to you, to see these changes in these children, and to know that you've been responsible for helping them.
It is. It's fabulous. It's hard. I remember coming back from the very first trip I did, and a friend who had done trips other places said to me, one of the hardest things is going to be to articulate the feelings that you have. It's just so rewarding, so almost overwhelming. The children will draw you a little drawing or bring you a present, and it does become your passion. And once you've done this, it's in your blood, and you will continue to do it.
I think what you do is wonderful, and I'm so glad to be able to present these programs. When did you first learn about this Kids First orthopedic program?
My friend whom I mentioned, Greg Mencio, was at Duke with me from college medical school residency, and he had started the group. And it had been in existence for about 5 years, and we had talked about it before. And we ran into him at a Duke meeting, and really the reason I was interested in doing it, but I wouldn't have done it if my wife hadn't more than gently nudged me. She basically said, you've always wanted to do this, go do it. And I probably wouldn't have had she not pushed me, but it was great. And I was joining Greg, who was a good friend, and the rest of the people had become good friends.
So you were immediately interested
in
it from the get-go. What do you have to do to become a volunteer? Do you have to do any special training, or do you have to have special inoculations to work in these third world countries?
To be a volunteer in our group, you have to be one of us, which sounds snobbish, but we've been a self-contained unit forever, and the only time we get a new person is if someone can no longer go, which is rare. It's been the same anesthesia crew, the same surgical crew And there have been some exceptions. One of our surgeons had a baby and missed a year, but basically it's been the same crew. And the nurses are very much the same way. So since we're one small unit, we don't have people who come and go. We do take a resident every year from Vanderbilt,
That's
and
good.
often one from Duke, and we will often take med students. I've taken my children on the trips, as have many of the other team members. And the second part of your question, inoculations. In Mexico, you don't need many. In Brazil, Dominican Republic, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Colombia, all those you did need more. But now, I don't take anything special from Mexico. I have gotten vaccinated to certain things, and I keep them updated, but that's it.
Do you have to have a special visa?
No, you have to have permits to bring your equipment in. Those get all filled out and approved ahead of time.
Who funds your missions?
We do.
I was going to ask you if it came out of your pocket.
We pay for all our nurses' travel,
That's
then
a really nice thing.
well, we figure they're taking a week of their time,
Yep.
and we pay for our own travel. And I've gotten a lot of people. I kind of run part of it, and Greg runs part of it, but I've taken care of all the work with the government. So in Mexico, I've met with people who have volunteered to donate food and donate transportation. So our in-country costs are very low. Our biggest cost is transportation, and then there are certain pieces of equipment, not durable equipment, but things like cast material, OR packs, those have to be purchased every year. So that's the other major cost that we have.
And you take those too?
We take all those with us. We ship them ahead of time. We travel on the plane with our OR equipment, but the cast material, the OR packs are all shipped ahead of time.
Now, I'm currently finishing up radiation, as you know,
Yes.
for breast cancer. And the women over at the radiation center at Allen B. Pearson, when I mentioned your name, they said, we have a box. We're saving stuffed animals for Dr. Andrews to take to these kids.
And they brought them to my office. And what we do is when we ship down our crates of material, we will ship boxes of toys for the children. We try to give each kid, when we see them in the first day we get there, we screen all the kids for children. We give them something that day. And then when they come in for their OR day, we give them something else. And then post-op, we give them something else. And a lot of times it might be a baseball cap or a pencil, but we try to give each one something like a stuffed animal.
And they're probably tickled to death with anything that you give them.
They are.
I'm going to interrupt where I am in these questions and just say that if anybody out there watching has any stuffed animals or any toys that you'd like to donate so that Dr. Andrews can take them on his missions, please contact me at our AOL account. That's Lynchburg Live Now at AOL.com, and I will get the word to him, and we will really appreciate any kind of donations like that. How long are you away on each mission?
Well, there are several facets of a mission. The main trip is a 10-day trip. That's our surgical trip. Last year we did 175 operations. Then I go back 6 weeks later and take all the casts off and do all the post-op work. And then there's another trip that Greg and I do together where we go to pre-screen a lot of the children. There's a rehab center 2 hours away in a town called Irapuato, and we'll go there and spend one day and screen a lot of their children. We'll screen kids in the local town. And there's a fair amount of work that has to be done with our volunteers. We have a huge group of volunteers who work with us and with the government. So there are 4 trips a year total, one of which is a surgical trip.
That's a lot of preparation has to go into this.
Yes, it does.
Willie, my husband, the first thing he thought when I told him about what you do, he said, is there a language barrier? How do you communicate with these people?
We're very lucky in that I have a lot of volunteers locally who speak Spanish. One of our anesthesiologists is fluent in Spanish. One of our nurses is essentially fluent, although she wouldn't tell you she is. And most of us can speak enough Spanish to get by, but we have a group of volunteers, probably about 30 of them, that work with us where we're there. So we don't have any problem with communication.